You hear me, I should say?
Yes, Graham. How are you?
Great. Okay, in that case, it's 5 p.m. and it's showtime.
Okay, perfect.
I'll let you do the intro, Alexia, and then I'll kick off from there.
Sure, perfect. So let me just give some admission to some other participants that are still joining us today. Give me just 1 second, please. And we should be starting now. Okay, thank you. And first of all, thank you very much for all of you joining us today. It is a pleasure to have you over here. Welcome to our How to Design an Asynchronous Training Experience for Your Remote Learners webinar. My name is Alexia Sanchez, and I'm the EdTech Director for US and Canada at Cypher Learning and your host for this live session. Today, we are joined by our special guest, Graham Glass. Graham is the CEO and founder of Cypher Learning, a company that specializes in providing learning platforms for organizations around the world. Graham has had many years of experience working in education, corporate training, and computer technology fields. As well, he was a senior lecturer at the University of Texas, has written several books about his work, and has given many speeches on educational topics at conferences around the world. In this session, Graham will share with us how to design asynchronous training and the best practices we should all consider in remote learning. We will also have a Q&A section at the end of the session, so make sure to prepare your questions for Graham and post them in the chat area when it's time. It is great to have you here, Graham. And let's start by sharing a bit about why is it important to offer synchronous programs instead of only synchronous or blended learning.
Super. Well, thanks a lot for the introduction, Alexia. I hope my internet connection is working okay. It should be good. I'm in San Francisco, so it's pretty high speed. And before I actually answer a question, I want to proudly show off my Lego collection. So as most of us around the world, we're in lockdown. As you can see, I have my beautiful Lego boat. And I've got my Lego Saturn V space rocket. So we're all in the lockdown together. We may as well have some fun. So as Alexia said, I'm the CEO of Cypher Learning. We're the only company in the world that actually provides a branded learning platform for schools, for universities, businesses, and individuals. So we've got quite a good idea of what's going on. And there's at least two reasons why it's very important to figure out how to do asynchronous learning. In other words, one where the instructor and the learner are not online at the same time. Training in classrooms, so suddenly, whoops, everyone's suddenly under lockdown. At that point, you need to be able to figure out how do you continue to teach your students. But at the same time, though, we really believe that the future of learning and the only way that we're going to be able to provide a world-class education for every single person on the planet is to improve the way that we do teaching and learning so that children and adults all around the world can teach and learn at any time. So there is the short term, and then there is the longer term. And you know, the reason that I got into this business, I was originally used to teach computer science at the University of Texas, Dallas. I love training so much, I formed a professional training company for businesses all around America. And then I founded Cypher Learning so that we could try and improve the way that people teach and learn. So we're very, very passionate about this particular area. The last thing I'll say before I give you kind of the itinerary, one of my good friends who's a serial, very successful entrepreneur called Peter Yared here in the Bay Area, he wrote an article recently saying that the virus is essentially fast-forwarding the planet 10 years into the future with regard to adoption of internet technology, whether it's online education, online fitness, online yoga, more and more people doing business remotely. So this is definitely affecting the education industry in a profound way. And I do think after this crisis is over, because it eventually will be over, a lot of people will start to realize that we can really improve the way that we teach and learn. So I'll give you just a little quick summary of what we're gonna discuss. It's going to be 6 areas. Part 1 is introduction, which I just gave you. So that's part 1 done. Part 2 is we're going to talk about asynchronous versus synchronous learning, because it's not binary. It's not A or B. There's actually a spectrum in between. I have my personal favorite. You might have your own personal favorite too, but at least I'll run through those things. Part 3 is I'm going to discuss a taxonomy for asynchronous learning. So even asynchronous learning, there's lots of different ways to structure asynchronous learning. As you might have guessed, I do have my favorite, but I'll run through several of the ones that are available. Part 4, I'm going to go through other things that you need to think about when you're doing asynchronous learning. And part 5 is the really practical hands-on part. So I'm going to actually show you specific techniques in a demo of how to do some of the things that I've mentioned earlier on. And in the very last part, part 6, we're going to talk about the future of asynchronous learning. So at this point, I'll hand you back to Alexia, who might ask me a couple of questions, and then we'll move on with part 2. So back to you, Alexia.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Graham, for sharing that, that information with us. First of all, and I have a first question over here that says, what are some elements that ensure that our asynchronous training programs are effective?
Sorry, I couldn't catch the last sentence.
Yes. What are some elements to ensure that our asynchronous training programs are effective?
Well, that's actually what we're going to discuss in part 3, 4, and 5. So I'm not going to skip forward to that. I'll just say, stay tuned and you'll find out.
Perfect. Let's go to the second question that I have over here. What are some benefits of asynchronous learning?
Okay, well, so, one obvious benefit is in a lockdown situation like this, you don't all have to be online at the same time. It's really hard, especially in countries that maybe don't have the best internet access, or, rural America. A lot of people think America's, so modern. It's not. There's lots of rural areas that have very poor internet access. So what it means is that the instructor can put together a really nice educational program, maybe for the week, maybe for the entire month. And when the worker or the learner happens to have internet access, they can connect up, do their part, maybe leave some things for submission, disconnect, and later on the assistant can take care of it. So that's one of the more practical things is related to internet access. Obviously, if you're going to do synchronous stuff, you all have to have a high-speed web conferencing, and a lot of people don't have that. And like I say, I think in the longer term, one of the benefits is that people will become better and better at packaging up their knowledge of the field, packaging it in a way that they can make it available to millions of people. So right now, our education system is not very scalable. You have one teacher, you might have 20 to 40 people in a room. And, there's only so many fantastic teachers. There's some really bad teachers, some fantastic teachers, a lot of teachers in the middle. But if there is a way to take the very best teachers, allow them to make their things, then that can benefit everybody. So I think there's tactical, and once again, there is long-term as well. So at this point, I'm going to go into part 2, which is to do with synchronous versus asynchronous and the spectrum. So the most basic one is in-person synchronous. So that's the case where you literally walk into the room, there are other people in the room, and you start giving your lecture. And there's a lot of benefits to that. You get to know the people, you can strike up friendships, relationships. You can learn enough about them to use anecdotes that are tailored just for your particular audience. You can give examples that are specific to your audience. There are obviously, side effects that aren't that great. So for example, a lot of business training involves flying. And these days, you just can't fly into an in-person training. But the most basic one, the one that we're all used to, the one that I used to do, is synchronous in person. Now, if that's the one that you're most comfortable with, then when there is a situation like this, a lockdown, or you've got some, remote situations, the most natural and comfortable thing is to then go to synchronous remote. So the idea of synchronous remote is we use a webcam just like we're doing right now. So this is a synchronous remote situation. where you will have the learners and the instructors all on some kind of web conference going through materials. It might be guided, there might be a lot of Q&A, but that's the one that's the most natural one as the fallback plan, which is synchronous remote. But as I mentioned earlier, there are many cases where that's not practical. You can't all be there on your high performance internet all at the same time. So the next one is pure asynchronous. And by pure asynchronous, what I mean is an instructor will put together the set of modules that are going to be in your course. You know, this is your first module, then your second module, then your third module, etc. And you say to the people, you can enroll whenever you want. You proceed at your own pace through that work. And by the time you're done, you're completed and you get some certificate of completion. And that is pure asynchronous because there is literally no synchronous interaction between the learners and the instructors. And a lot of the massive online courses are like that. If you have 100,000 people taking a course, it's really hard for an instructor to have a one-on-one with any particular individual. The fourth one is asynchronous primarily, but with some synchronous exchange. It's kind of a hybrid. So I'll give you an example. Let's just say that as an instructor, you say, we've got a week worth of modules I put together. Do that at your own pace. You can do them all on Monday and you've got the rest of the week free. But on Friday afternoon at 3 p.m., we're going to have a web conference call where you can ask me questions, students can share things. It's almost like synchronizing up again for the next week. So if you have, for example, a 1 month or a 2 month course, you might have 6 or 7 of those synchronous video catch-ups. That's actually my favorite because, you know, some learner might run through the first 3 modules, but have some really, you know, tough things that they don't completely understand. And if you don't have the time maybe to do a one-on-one session with them and really answer their questions so they get it, it's going to be that much harder for them when they do module 4, 5, 6. You don't have to do that, but I do think let's call it the hybrid async model is probably my personal preference. So just to summarize what we went through in part 2, I really just mentioned it's not binary, synchronous versus asynchronous. There's at least 4 different kinds in between. And my personal favorite is a hybrid async. At that point, I will pause again, hand over to Alexia, and take a few questions.
Okay, perfect. So we have over here a question that says, which style of learning can allow you to offer you a more personalized or adaptive learning experience to your learners?
Yeah, so I would say that there's 2 parts of that question. Part 1 is what I mentioned, which is having asynchronous, but with some synchronous personal exchange periodically is definitely part of the solution. But I do think that using some advanced techniques, like you might not have heard them, but we're going to cover them very soon, dynamic branching, adaptive learning, gamification, automation, those kind of things can really allow you to create a pretty magical experience for an async course. So I will say what we've covered so far, the synchronous video periodically is very important, but then some of the more advanced techniques that I'm going to go into part 3 of this presentation will address and give you a lot more specifics.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you very much, Graham. We have another question. This is from Joseph Malari, and it says, would this include a dedicated team in creating modules?
Oh, would I recommend that?
Yes.
I wouldn't necessarily say that they create the modules, but I do think it's really nice if you have access to an experienced team that can provide your teachers and instructors with best practices for doing this. So, you know, obviously, you know, within Cypher Learning, we've got a lot of experience in terms of how to do this kind of thing. And a lot of organizations don't necessarily have that advantage. So some of the things that we've done previously is that our EdTech staff will actually do train the trainer with some of their top instructors. You know, they might be the ones who are enthusiastic about this stuff, the ones more comfortable with technology, the ones with experience maybe in the classroom. and show them lots of examples and answer questions for them and give them training into how to do this stuff. Because once you've got 3 or 4 people in your organization with that knowledge, at that point, they can really spread this knowledge quite quickly. So they can give their own seminars. They might even create asynchronous courses on how to create asynchronous courses, which I know sounds funny, but it does make sense.
Perfect, thank you. And I also have another question that says, how can I know which type of remote training is best for me?
That's a good question. I would say it partly depends on your audience. So for example, young children, like, I've got a toddler, there's no way he can do asynchronous learning. He actually requires a teacher there, reading the book, playing the musical instrument, whatever it is. But at a more broad level, there are some audience members who maybe because of their culture or their age, really prefer synchronous video. Maybe doing some assignments, like doing some assignments offline, but mostly synchronous. But more sophisticated learners, including college students, a lot of workers in industry are very comfortable with technology. Those kind of people typically do quite well with asynchronous. They actually like the idea that I don't have to do it right now. I can go home, get a cup of coffee or something stronger, and then take a module, and they actually really like the fact that they can learn when it's more convenient for them. So, I think on whole, I do think that asynchronous hybrid is probably going to be the most popular, the most flexible. It gives you the chance to talk to people, and it's more scalable. But you have to recognize there might be variance in your audience. So at this point, it's time for part 3. Part 3, I think, is in some respects the coolest part. I've been looking forward to this part all day long, which is a taxonomy of asynchronous learning. So let's just say you decide, okay, I'm going to give it a whirl. I'm going to create a course that can be taken at somebody's own pace, anytime, any place. What do you do? So the simplest model is what we might call linear autoplay. And if you've used LinkedIn Learning, for example, that's exactly how LinkedIn Learning works. So in LinkedIn Learning, there'll be a course on digital marketing, for example. And they will create a series of, say, 10 modules. And each module will say, this is a 5-minute module, 6-minute, 4-minute, etc. And they're almost completely videos. In fact, LinkedIn Learning used to be called Linda. And Linda, that was what their claim to fame was, a large library of videos. So what you can do is you can get your cup of coffee, you can sit at home, and you can go to module 1 and you click play, and that's all you've got to do. It goes to the whole video, 5-minute video. When it gets to the end, goes to second module, plays the video all the way to the end. And I have to say, in a lot of cases, that's all you need. If it's a topic which is fairly straightforward, it's very it builds upon it. So there's an obvious like precondition for each module. Then people can hit the pause button. They can resume. They can go away. They can click resume. It's a very pleasant and convenient way to learn. So so the first style of asynchronous, the simplest, is linear autoplay. Now, what about the next step? So let's just say that you want to make sure that your learners just don't go all the way to the end. And at the end of it, they're completely clueless, that they haven't absorbed anything. So what you might want to do is to say, after every 2 or 3 videos and a natural pause, you might want to put a quiz in there. And so they watch the first 3 modules, they can go rewind and pause if they want. Then they get to the quiz section. They take the quiz, maybe they get 100%, fantastic. Then you can go straight to part 4. But if they realize, oh, I didn't quite understand that, then they can rewind, go to module 2, take it again. And you can make those quizzes quite sophisticated, by the way. So you can create question banks. You can have each question bank tagged with the specific concepts that it's measuring, so that every single student gets a different quiz, but all those quizzes are always covering everything in those videos. And that's actually a pretty nice approach as well. And it's quite simple. Like anyone can learn how to do this in 15 minutes 3 videos on autoplay, followed by the quiz, followed by 3 videos, followed by autoplay. That's a really nice way to do things. So I would call this particular one in our taxonomy linear with hurdles that you have to go over. What about the next one? So let's just say that your particular course is really a collection of modules, and those modules don't necessarily have preconditions. In other words, you don't necessarily have to do A followed by B. Maybe you can do A and then D and then B and then F, and as long as you cover them all, that's all that matters. So that's like random access. You can have a series of modules, and once you've done all the modules, maybe you take a final quiz, and then maybe at that point you're done. So that's another one which is very easy to do, but it's fairly uncommon because most of the time in a course, you don't have the concept of you can do anything in any order. Usually there is some degree of dependency. But that's the third one in my little taxonomy. Number 4 is called static branching. And here's the idea of static branching. It's a bit like a kind of a tree, but at the end it goes back into a single branch again. So the idea is that within your course, let's just say digital marketing manager, one part of the course might be digital marketing tools. And another part of the course might be, use of social media. And maybe for whatever reason, these things are fairly distinct, like you can do one or the other. So what you can do is you can create something where you have an introduction, and then maybe at that point there's 3 branches, A, B, C. Branch A might be modules 1, 2, 3. Branch B might be modules 1, 2, 3, 4. And branch C might be 1 and 2. And after the introduction, it says, okay, these are the main areas of the course. Click on the one that you want to do next. So you can go, I'm going to do branch 1. Ding, 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 ding. Then you've done it. Congratulations. Now what do you want to do? I want to do branch 3. Da, 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 da. Then I want to do branch 2. And at that point, congratulations, you have finished the course. And you can jazz that up by having a randomized quiz at the end of each branch. So in other words, if you do decide you're going to go down the first branch, you can't complete the first branch until you've taken the quiz, and then that unlocks the next branch. So it's still static. In other words, you, the instructor, figure out exactly the sequence. Everyone will ultimately take exactly the same modules. The only difference is you've given them a kind of curated pathway, but you give them the freedom of determining which pathway they're going to take first. And there's one weird psychological thing. I do think that people really like being able to make choices in a course. I don't know if that's been proven, but I remember as a kid, there was this thing called Make Your Own Adventure. And I don't know if you ever read one of those books. It was before the internet. It's literally a book. And you go through page 1, like there's a haunted house. Go through page 2. Oh, you've come at the gate of the haunted house. Do you want to go through the front door, or do you want to go around the back and see if there's a secret entrance in? I love that kind of stuff. So I do think psychologically, if you give people choices in the way that they pass through the course, that automatically makes it more fun for them. So that's the static branching case. The final one, which is the most sophisticated one, is what we call dynamic branching. And what this means is that the modules that any one student will actually end up taking can differ between students. It's a more personalized, adaptive way of doing things. And I'll give you an example. You might come into the course, for example, and it says in the first part, there's 2 different ways to learn social media. You can do it through a case study, or you can do it through a simulation. Which one do you want to do? But regardless of which one you take, at the end, it marks off, okay, you've done social media. So you don't have to go through the other path. It's up to you. Do you learn it through A or do you learn it through B? But once you've done, you've done. So that's a simple example. Another one would be you're going through a pathway and it takes a quiz to find out, how well do you know this material already? And if you know the material very well, then it might show some advanced modules. But if you're not doing very well, it might show you some remedial modules that you have to take before it unlocks the advanced modules. So in other words, based on how they're doing in your course and their own personal needs, they will have their own circuit through that particular course. And you can actually even make it more sophisticated than this if you track something called competencies. So I'm going to give you a quick background on competencies, and then you'll see why I'm a big fan of them. So if you think about teaching and learning, the general idea is if you're teaching a subject, social media, then my goal is to teach you a certain set of skills. And these skills can be fairly fine-grained. So for example, there might be a top-level competency called social media tools. And under there might be HubSpot and Buffer.io and a few other tools. So if I'm an instructor, I'm thinking I want by the end of this course for you to have mastered Buffer.io and HubSpot and this other tool. And once you demonstrate your mastery, then ideally the system will remember that. So let's just say that you adopt competencies. You don't have to for asynchronous, but let's just say that you do. And you have taken a previous course during which you demonstrated mastery of HubSpot. So in your learning platform, there is a series of measurements that are independent of the courses that you've taken that now know that Graham Glass is a master of HubSpot. Now, when I come into this new course, if the person who created that course said, hey, if you already master HubSpot, just hide that module, they don't need it. Now at this point, I'm taking into account their previous history of skills so that when they go through my new course, I can either give them remedial help or I can actually hide modules for things that they've already taken. Now that's definitely pretty leading edge. So a lot of people are not doing that. But that is the kind of stuff which is totally possible using a sophisticated learning platform. The very last thing I'm going to mention here is that you can actually create things called pathways as well. So you, for example, let's just say that you want to do asynchronous learning for the entire semester, not just for 1 month or 2 months. Now, putting every single thing that they might want to do into a single course might be a little bit too heavyweight, might be too confusing. So for example, you could have one course that covers 10 modules in one area, another course which has 10 modules in a different area, and then you can create a master course, which is really a curated pathway. So module 1 in this course says, take this course, followed by this quiz, followed by this video. And then that will unlock the second module. And the second module says, take this course, and then get the certificate, and then get this video. So asynchronous learning and generating ways to learn material is not restricted just for individual courses. You can actually create things called paths that actually tie different courses together. So hopefully that's given you a kind of an idea of my internal mental taxonomy. And I'm just going to run through it just in case you want to note it down somewhere. We've got linear autoplay, that's like LinkedIn. We've got linear with hurdles, like a quiz you have to do. We've got random access, take modules in any order, doesn't make any difference. We've got static branching, where everyone will end up taking exactly the same content. And the last one is dynamic branching, which can actually change what you see depending on your history. And you probably guessed my favorite. My favorite is dynamic branching. So at this point, I will pause again and take a few questions via Alexia.
Thank you very much, Graham. And our first question is there a need for an IT expert when creating this asynchronous modules?
So happily, the answer is no. Now, obviously, I'm the CEO of Cypher Learning, so I have to mention, obviously, we've got a platform that does all this stuff. But, you know, if you have a really user-friendly platform where anyone can create pathways and adaptive learning, then there's absolutely no need for an IT staff at all. And in fact, you know, one of the interesting things that we've found is when this whole virus started hitting, we saw a 300% increase in the traffic to our site in 2 days. which was quite incredible. But fortunately, we handle all the IT heavy lifting, so none of our customers have to do anything, even the ones on our free Neo plan. So as a result, people kept on using their courses without having to know anything about this kind of stuff. But I think it definitely sounds scary. So if somebody says, yeah, I'm thinking about doing dynamic adaptive learning, and then you think, oh my God, that's going to be so complicated. But that's one of the reasons for part 4. I'm actually going to show you how easy it is for someone with no technical background, no IT anything, to do exactly what I've been talking about.
Thank you very much. We're getting great questions, and we have another one that says, what are some elements or items that I should consider when planning for asynchronous modules?
Well, I think, some of the key areas which I'm actually going to be talking about are gamification, making sure people are motivated, automation, because you're not going to be there. So if you want something to happen when a certain thing occurs while the student is learning, you have to use automation to take over what you'd otherwise be doing manually. I would say one which has nothing to do with technology is make content bite size, make it really small and easy to consume. And we've seen customers that do this very efficiently, and we've seen customers that really could improve. Like, just imagine that you're at home, you're under lockdown, and it says, welcome to the course. The first thing, please watch this 2-hour video. It's like, oh no, I don't want to sit there and watch a 2-hour video and then remember it all and take a quiz. But if you make it more like LinkedIn Learning, which is take this 5-minute video, take a coffee break, come back, do the quiz. Tomorrow we'll do this 5-minute video. People are like, oh, this is much more like my style. And this is, partly human nature, partly it's generational. I know that especially these days where people are used to high interrupt levels, like I'm in the middle of something, bing, my cell phone goes, bing, oh, I need to do this video, go, bing, social networking. People are used to being interrupted all the time. So if you can make it so they can squeeze in 5 minutes of concentrated learning between twittering with their friends, they're more likely to learn it than absorb a 1-hour video. So I think there are some technical things and there are some more like human psychological things. But in step 4, I'm actually going to go through in detail a lot of these particular things.
Excellent, that's great. Graham, in just one question from Joseph Mallory. It says, Dr. Aaron Barrett from TEDx EB expressed his take on why e-learning is killing education. Part of that was due to missing storytelling. So with that in mind, how do we effectively design our e-learning with that in mind?
Now that is a great question. And I have an answer for you. Because this is actually something we've been working on for the last few months. I'll take a step back. When I was a kid, I used to love cartoons. And one of my favorite ones was Scooby-Doo, which is, Shaggy Dog and the Scooby-Doo dog. And they always used to have these adventures, and they were always mystery adventures. Unfortunately, they all had the same plot from what I remember now. But they were really good fun, and they would like solve this problem, and they would get this clue, and then that unlock the next part of the adventure. So a few days ago, I thought, man, it's been so long since I saw Scooby-Doo. I went to YouTube to find out whether I could find a Scooby-Doo. And what I didn't realize is they actually made a computer version of Scooby-Doo. It was exactly the same cartoon guy that you could play on your computer. But what would happen is it would be like play your own adventure. So you'd be, Shaggy and Scooby would be walking along, and there'd be these 2 tunnels, and they had to decide which tunnel they were going to go down. One of them probably had a Scooby snack. So Scooby would go, oh, Shaggy, let's go down this tunnel and get the Scooby snack. But they would go down the tunnel, and then there would be a mystery, and they would solve it. And so the children who played it could make their way through and solve the clues. And simply playing the game was telling the story, but it was also unlocking the clues and unlocking the next levels of the game. So I think that doing a really cool online course is a lot like scripting a movie. So you kind of have to think ahead and go, okay, how do I take this course in physics but make it more exciting? Make it so like you've landed in a forest, and the food is getting too warm and you need to figure out how do you learn about refrigerators to keep the food warm. And then once you've done that, then it starts getting cold at night and you have to figure out how do you use a heater to heat up the tent. You can, there's always creative ways to teach something. And if you have a creative way and turn it into a story, then you can use the learning platform to create these paths where as the students take these decisions, they are led through the learning process. Now that's not easy. A lot of us require many attempts at a course to get to the point where we can actually do effective storytelling. But it is definitely totally possible to transfer the creativity of a human brain, the plots, the anecdotes and those things, and capture them in a way that the students, maybe it's not identical, but it's still pretty good. So at this point, I'm going to go into part 4. Now, part 4 is actually a kind of a short part. Part 5 is the longest part. Part 4 is forgetting about technology. What are some other concerns about having a successful asynchronous experience? And I would say the biggest one is motivation. So if you're stuck at home or you're back in your home office after work and you want people to really get into what it is you're trying to teach them, you really want to motivate them. And if you've got one of these old style courses which says, and I've seen this, we've got customers who do this unfortunately, which is our course is one module, module 1 has a 200-page PDF, enjoy. So literally your asynchronous learning is flipping a page, a 200-page PDF. I would hate to take a course like that. So you really got to look at it like, how do I keep these people happy, engaged, motivated? We don't want them to get bored. And in part 5, I'm going to show you there's a lot of different ways that you can do that utilize technology like gamification, adaptive learning, pop-ups, custom notifications. There's a lot of things that you can do. I would say another thing though, is you don't want people to get lonely. I mean, humans are a very social animal. And even if you're introverted, it doesn't mean that you don't like socialize. It just usually means there's a few friends you want to interact with rather than hundreds. And so ideally in an asynchronous course, although parts of it you might be on your own, it's really a lot more fun if you feel like you're in the presence of other people, or there are people you can chat with, or even if it's just you're in a game and you can see all the other people in the game or who's online. That's the kind of stuff which gives you a feeling of community. And especially when you're stuck in a place during lockdown, feeling like you're part of a community is really important. One of the very cool features that we've been working on that we're going to releasing later on in May doesn't really have anything to do with asynchronous learning, but it's making a platform that feels like it's alive and a community experience. So for example, when you first log in and you can see tiles for all the courses that you're in, we're going to have this little kind of pulsing button that shows you how much activity is occurring in each of these courses. So you can very quickly say, hey, there's a lot of people in course 3 right now. There's a fewer people in course 1, with a scrolling live widget that shows you what all your friends are up to, people dropping in and out of online, an activity scrolling live widget. So that way, when you walk in, it's not like you're walking into this dead zone where there's it's like a ghost town. You actually feel like, hey, I'm logging in and all my buddies and my instructors, everyone's flourishing, having a great time, and I'm part of a community. So I would, just to recap, section 4, you got to deal with boredom. How do you keep people really engaged? And ideally, you want a sense of community. And that's why I said I really prefer async hybrid. That way, even if your friends and colleagues aren't online all the time, every Friday you get to have a nice video chat with everybody else in the course. So before we get into section 5, where I'm actually going to give you demos and all kinds of stuff about all these features, I'll pause and take some more questions via Alexia.
Sure, and we have a great one over here that says, one of the great areas of asynchronous learning maybe is assessment. What assurance do we have that our learners are really learning using this type of methods with all the other distractions involved, like social media?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And there's two different ways to do that. It's like, what do they call it? The carrot and the stick. So the carrot way is you make your courses really good fun, so students actually want to take them. I know it's a radical concept, but that's the one that's really the best. And that's the carrot approach. And I'll give you an example. Once again, my example has nothing to do with IT or any of this, sophisticated stuff.
Yeah.
And I used to teach programming languages at the University of Texas at Dallas. And the boring, typical way to teach programming language is, okay, we're going to build this program and it has to add up all these numbers and then do a reciprocal and just like grind it out. But when I started my course, on day one, I said, hey, I want to teach you all about artificial intelligence and neural network simulators. I'm going to show you this animated graphic about how this neural network simulator solves this really tough problem on its own. And suddenly everyone forgets they're in programming languages. They're like, wow, this is really cool. I didn't know about AI. I didn't know about this stuff. So they're really motivated. And then I say, what we're going to do this semester is you are going to build what you just saw. And everyone's like, wow, that's really going to be great fun, And how do they learn how to do it? They have to learn programming languages. So the whole semester was essentially a project-oriented learning. And everyone was motivated because everyone really wanted to end the semester by saying, I have built a graphical neural network simulator. And not only is it fun, but practically speaking, employers really, really prefer a solid portfolio of projects that you've done versus just a whole bunch of grades. So I would say, making it where it's really good fun is a key one. As far as actually the assessment part of it, there's only a certain limited number of things that you can do to actually prevent cheating, for example. And it doesn't make any difference how much technology you use to try and stop teaching. I can be at home and I've just got my cell phone chatting with my friend and he's just feeding me the answers. So, for example, we're about to release integration with a lockdown browser so that if you have a particular quiz that you want to be taken where the student cannot use any other aspect of the computer apart from what they're doing, you can do it, but it doesn't prevent the obvious workaround, which is, hey, just open up another computer. So there's only really so much that you can do when it comes to assessment. I will say that if you have the time, written assessments are much harder to fake out than multiple choice. I mean, multiple choice, sometimes you get lucky and you click through and you get a great grade. But if you have a written assessment, assuming that you have the time and the energy to actually read them and score them, those are actually much more effective, I think, in the long run. And our system has great support for that. People can upload their submissions as videos, record them directly from the browser. They can upload audio submissions. There's a little threaded comment thing, so the instructor can see your submission, and simultaneously they can message with the student can message them back, and they can work together on improving their submission. Our system is unusual. We have 10 different kinds of assessment that we can conduct, from simple things like quizzes and free-form assignments to debates to discussion forums. So there really is a lot that you can do. So at this point, I think it's time now to get into section 5, which is to give you some examples of concrete things that you can do for doing asynchronous learning. And to do this, I'm actually going to share my screen and I'm going to actually dive in to our platform. So here we go. And I'm always a big fan of hands-on stuff. This is the portal. So when you use our platform, before you even log in, you can have a beautiful customizable visitor portal that shows you a catalog of all the courses that are available. Some of them might be for sale, some of them might be free. If it's for internal use, maybe you don't have a visitor catalog in the first place. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to log in as an administrator just to show you how easy it is to set up this kind of stuff. Now, when you log into our system, you typically get a dashboard. A dashboard might be for administrators, a dashboard might be for instructors, but at a glance, you can see everything that's going on in your system. who's using it, which department is using it, enrollment rate. If you're selling courses, you can see e-commerce over time. And all of this is completely customizable. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go into an individual course to kind of show you what a complete course looks like and then how you might build your own. So I can go into the courses and go into this graphic design fundamentals. Now, if you're an instructor, the instructor dashboard is really nice, especially with asynchronous learners. So think about it. You might have 100 people in your course. It's really important for you to know where is everybody, how many people have been enrolled, how many people are finished, how many people are behind. And if you don't have a platform tracking all that stuff and presenting it in a nice graphical format, it can become very tedious. So as an example, here's my mastery widget, which is not only showing me average, third quartile, first quartile mastery, but it's actually automatically showing me this information over time. And unfortunately, it looks like things are heading in the wrong direction in this particular course. Let me have a look at a four-week one. So dashboard's really, really handy. But now let's go into the kind of the meat of the course, which are the modules themselves. So if you are building an asynchronous course, you might have arranged it so there are 12 different modules. This might be the introduction module. And each one of these modules is comprised of sections. Some of these modules might award points and badges if you're into gamification. Some of them might involve mastery. So if you do them, you update somebody's mastery. And you might have some kind of final quiz that if you pass, gives you the ultimate completion. So graphically speaking, here's what a course typically looks like to an instructor. It looks very similar to a learner, except that some of these modules might be locked or some of them might be hidden. It really depends on how you set up your system. If I go into a particular module, a module is typically comprised of sections. And these sections might be content like video or audio or text and images. Some of them might be some kind of an assessment. So this particular assessment with the little green pen is an essay, but you can have surveys, SCORM assessments, randomized quizzes, debates, discussion forums, etc. And if you're familiar with LTI, which stands for Learning Tools Interoperability, you can actually add third-party assessments if you want. They could be a simulation or it could be a crossword puzzle. And as you can see here, here's a little table of contents that shows me the entire pathway, but depending on how you've set it up, even in the table of contents, some might be hidden or some might be locked. And as an instructor, I can browse through my modules so you can see I'm looking at these modules bit by bit. And now let's talk about the first key feature, which is really helpful if you want to do asynchronous learning, which is automation. So let's just do a simple one. I mentioned it's really nice if you can have a personal touch, if you can keep the students motivated. So maybe what I want to do is I want to automatically send a message, a video welcome, 5 minutes after they've entered my class. So I don't want to make it feel too mechanical. I want them to go into a class, and then 5 minutes later, an unexpected delight is a customized video welcome. Dear Graham, welcome to my course, and a video. How does that sound? Let me show you how easy it is to do that. Here's my configuration menu, and one of the tabs is called Enrollment. Now, enrollment, there's a whole bunch of basic stuff, the maximum learners per course, how long you have to take the course if you want to make it time-based. But here is automation. And there's automation all over our system. When you complete a module, when you complete a course, if you're behind, if you're more advanced. But these are actions that happen when somebody enrolls. So I can just click here, Add. And as you can see, there are a lot of different things that you can do. But I'm going to say, I want to send them a custom notification. And I mentioned that you can customize this. So I'm going to say, welcome to @class name. So that's automatically going to replace @class name with the name of your class. Dear @user first name, great to have you here. And then if you want to, you can go ahead here and upload a video. Or if you want to, you can record a video directly from your browser if you don't have a camera handy. And then you can say, send this to the user. Because if you want to, you can actually send a message to, if it's in a school environment, send it to their parent. If it's a business, send it to their manager. I want to send it to user. And I don't want it to be immediate because that might be too mechanical. I want to say after 5 minutes. So boom, you see how easy that was? And it makes all the difference in terms of the student's reaction. Wow, I've never had that happen before in a class. So that's a very simple version of automation. Another simple version of automation might be in the completion configuration. What happens when they complete the course? So I can say I'm going to award them a certificate. And you can use a built-in certificate or an automated one. And you can customize it. So at the end of their course, they will see something like this. So it'll automatically fill out the name when the course was finished. Once again, you just set it one time, then you can rest, and you know every single person who completes your course is going to get a beautiful, customized, branded certificate of completion. Now let's talk about another aspect of automation, which is to do with gamification. So I mentioned that empirically, one of the most popular aspects that people have done is to gamify the course. So what you can do is you can say, in my course, I'm going to have a game. And I'm going to call this game, you know, my demo game. But people give them all kinds of creative names as well. This is just a really basic one. And then what you can do is you can say, in this game, I'm going to have bronze level, which is 100 points. And I'm going to have silver, which is 200 points. And, you know, gold level if I want. And then I can say, hey, when you get to bronze, what's going to happen? I'm going to give them a message, but I might give them a badge as well. So I'm going to automatically award them a badge, Alpha Pilot or something. We've got a whole badge gallery built in. So that when they get a certain number of points, they automatically get this badge as a kind of reward for what they're doing. And you can go through and you can say, hey, when you enroll a student, I'm going to give them 80 points to get them started. And I'm going to get rid of this one. I actually already did this one. So I'm going to say, when you go in, I'm going to award some points. I'm going to give you 80 points in the game, my demo game, and it's going to show automatically as a pop-up. And then when I go into module 1, the first part of module 1 said welcome. And I'm going to say, once you reach that and you've consumed the content, when you've completed it, I'm going to automatically give you another 30 points. So I'm going to give you 30 points when you get to that part into my demo game. Now at this point, let's take a look at how it works from a student's perspective. I could automatically enroll a student. There's lots of different ways to enroll people. I'm going to enroll the student using an access code. So I'm going to go into the learners part. Let me get a learner that's not in any John Van Click. Log in as that learner. So here's a learner that's not currently enrolled in any courses. So I'm going to go enroll in the course, enroll in that course. Here's my access code. And you can create a beautiful splash page as well. So in this particular case, I have the page, and also because I was enrolled in the course, I automatically get my first automation action, which is 80 points. After I've tried this, I might go, maybe I don't want it to pop up right away because they haven't even got the splash page. Maybe I'll give them 80 points after 3 minutes. So I get that, I continue to the course. Then here is my course, and here's the cool part now. Now I've got my first game. And this is part of making it asynchronous fun, and it's also part of forming a community, because as more and more people go online and more people start going in the game, I can see all of my colleagues showing up in that leaderboard as well, and you get a bit of friendly competition. We even support team games, so you can organize them into the red team and the blue team, and these teams can actually compete against each other. So now I've got 80 points, 20 points until I get bronze. Wow, I'm really motivated. Let's get going. So I go in here, I see my first section, which gave me a few points. And once I complete it and continue, we set the automation action. Boom. So I actually got a badge now because I went automatically into that bronze level. And I got this badge, Fast Learner. And I guess in a previous demo, I set up a few other automations. Normally, you wouldn't have that many pop up. So notice how easy it was for me. I could add a game in a couple of clicks. I make it fun by putting some levels. I sprinkle a bit of automation magic, and now I can start scheduling all kinds of fun things that happen. And remember, in about 4 minutes time, if I was actually to stay here, I'd actually get the custom welcome as well from the instructor. So that's a little bit about automation, a little bit about gamification. Let's talk now about adaptive learning. So one of the things that you can do is you can dynamically hide and show modules based on previous history. So for example, in this particular case, I can come down into this module and I can say, when you complete this module, I'm going to show another module in the course. So what you can do is you can build a course so that only once you've, say, gone into module 2, will it unlock module 3 or module 4. So the ability to create these dynamic pathways is very easy. Once you've mastered the concept of automation, now you can start using automation to hide and show and reveal content based on where you've been previously in the course. And later next week, we're also announcing something called hide and show filters. So you can go into a course and you can say, only show this to users that have a certain quality. So you can say, only show this to users who have a certain certificate, or only show this to users above a certain mastery level. So not only will you have adaptive learning based on automation, but you'll also have adaptive learning based on your previous history. Another very fun thing that you can do is to do with something called mastery rules. So I mentioned that we're a big fan of competencies. So in this particular case, this course covers a series of competencies, and all of the assignments are automatically tagged with the competencies that they assess. So you can arrange it, for example, that if you take this quiz, individual questions are linked to individual competencies. So if you do really well in that quiz, a lot of these competencies start moving from orange to green, for example. And I can see at a glance, here's my master dashboard, and I only have a few learners in my course. Let me see if I can bring some of the learners back. I have a feeling some of them might have been deactivated. Here we go. I'm going to reactivate all my users. I think we have like a 30-day limit set up in this course, so all the demo students have been deactivated. So here's what it looks more like when you've got a lot of users. So check this out. It's really nice for me now as an instructor. I tag everything with competencies. At the end of the day, I sit, drink my cup of coffee, and I can see exactly who is mastering all the different competencies in my course and give them personalized attention. Or if I want to, even better, I can give them automated attention. So check this out. Let's just say that I can say, if somebody is falling behind for more than X number of days in a particular competency, automatically send them a notification which says, hey Graham, I noticed you're behind in quantum theory. Here's a link to a great video on YouTube that you might find useful. Or if I actually want to have a one-on-one with them, I can set up an automated thing that sends a message to me saying, hey, you know, David Smith is falling behind, I'd recommend reaching out and having a video conference with them. Or if it's young children, you can send an automated message to their parents and say, hey, we noticed that Johnny's falling behind a little bit. If you want to, let's have a chat on the phone. So once you've taught a few times and you start having a feeling for all the competencies that people tend to have problems with, you can start using automation to automatically take actions if somebody is falling behind in a particular area. So hopefully this has given you a little bit of an idea that using automation combined with gamification, competencies, automation rules, you can really start to make these incredibly fun courses that as you go through the course, you're getting pop-ups, badges, achieving levels, personalized notifications. And as an instructor, you can see all of this stuff happening through your dashboard. So at this point, I'm going to stop my little live demo session, hand back to Alexia to answer a few more questions.
Thank you very much, Graham. And I mean, we've been getting a lot of questions regarding how to fairly assess students. And I do believe that right now, the way that you are showcasing some of the features will allow teachers to have a general view of their learners, who they are, and what they actually need, and how they can better assist them.
Yeah, and in fact, one thing I will mention, I obviously didn't show it because we didn't have that much time, but we also provide a dashboard view of a student. So you can go into a student and you can see what are all the competencies for the student historically over time, independent of the courses that they're in. So obviously, if you're an instructor for course X, you're most interested in the dashboard for your course. But for administrators or for teachers, we also have a dashboard view of the individual student. So there's different ways to look at, you know, what's going on.
Yes, that is correct. And that takes me to another question from one of the attendees that says, with all these learning platforms popping out, what characteristics of a good learning platform would you recommend?
Well, that's a loaded question because I'm CEO of a learning platform company. But I will say, you know, so what we did is we built what we wanted. So I've been teaching for a long time. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do is to capture my knowledge of a certain subject, capture it and make it available to a large number of people. So even though obviously we make money and it's our business and we're doing really well at it, primarily we're driven by building something that we as educators really want for ourselves. So the kind of things that we wanted are a beautiful user interface, and a lot of learning management systems are not beautiful. They might have a lot of features, but they do not look good. So we want something that's beautiful. We want something that's easy, you know, and I hoped I showed you, even to do some of these really leading edge sophisticated things, we try and make it so you can learn this stuff very, very fast without taking, you know, week-long seminars and peering through manuals. We want it to be really easy. We wanted it to be full-featured. So we understand the fact there's a lot of different situations where you teach. There's a lot of different ways that people like to teach. So a really good learning platform does have to be somewhat of a toolbox. We want to give you all the different ways, whether it's video conferencing, adaptive learning, gamification, great gradebook. You know, there's a whole lot of things that you've got to have, even though you might be looking towards the future. So very comprehensive. But I say, you know, we do pride ourselves on being forward thinking. So we really want to have the latest and greatest stuff there available to everybody. We don't want this thing to be just for the elite or just for people who are really, really rich. We want this to be available to, you know, as many instructors as possible.
That's great. And we have another last question that says, does this platform consider the needs of learners with different education needs?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, and there's two different axes for that. We've got very, very good accessibility features. So if you are blind or partially blind or dyslexic or whatever you want, there's quite a lot of features that we've got built in to allow people to access our platform. And we're constantly improving our accessibility features. So whether it's, you know, built-in screen readers, MS Immersive Reader for helping you with people with reading disabilities, high contrast themes. There's a lot of different ways that we allow our system to be used by people with various disabilities. But also, we do make our system so it can be used anywhere from literally kindergartens all the way through to sophisticated banking systems. And I mentioned we are the only company in the world that actually has 3 branded versions of our platform, one for businesses, schools and universities, and for individuals. And so we get information and feedback and usability analysis from all of those market sectors. So we know for a fact we're used in major banks around the world, and we're also used in kindergartens around the world. And so I think that's a kind of a testament to our usability, and that we're adaptive enough and enjoyable enough to be used by virtually anybody.
Excellent. That's great. Well, thank you very much, Graham. Thank you to everybody.
I do have one more. I know we're out of time, but I can't resist. There's just one more section, and this section is just a few minutes. Section number 6 is the future. So the question is, can we do better? And the answer is yes. So one of the things that we've been working on for a while, which is coming out probably around June timeframe, is built-in integration with artificial intelligence. And we're not PhDs in AI. We're not building our own neural networks. We're actually leveraging the same artificial intelligence that Amazon uses to run its e-commerce site. So Amazon has an amazing AI team, way better than any one company could ever try and match. But fortunately, they make all their technology available to companies like ours. So one of the things that we're going to be releasing is support for automatic recommendations powered by AI, and so that the system will actually adapt to your own needs automatically. Now you can turn this off if you don't want it, or you can turn it on. It's completely up to you. But the general idea is that you will be able to tell our system literally by voice. So we're going to do integration with Alexa as well. You will be able to tell our voice, I'm interested in learning about nuclear physics. And it will start to make recommendations about this YouTube video, this course in your system, this third-party course, this quiz system. And you as a customer will be able to control, do we only allow recommendations from information within our own system? So maybe you don't want it recommending YouTube videos. It'll be completely up to you. But we are definitely on the leading edge of adopting artificial intelligence. And so that's kind of the next step for our company with Alexa for voice recognition. So you'll be able to control our system through Alexa, and also AI. So you'll be able to get automatic recommendations through Amazon.
Excellent. That's great.
The end.
Thank you very much, Graham. And as well, thank you everyone for joining us. And please remember to visit our site, matrixlms.com, where you can register for a 14-day free trial.
Super. Anyway, thank you so much. I want to say I had a really good time, as I'm sure you could tell. I know it's a difficult situation, so hopefully everyone can stay safe and healthy. And I hope what we discussed today will be very useful for you.
Thank you very much, Graham.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Have a good day, everyone.